Hi guys, now we're going to go over dealing with ethical issues in human research. So, like we did with the ethical issues, I'm going to focus on the same 3 points because it just makes it easier. You're learning what they are and then you're learning how to deal with those particular ones, and you're not actually learning new information. So we did deception, we did protection from harm, and we did informed consent with the ethical issues. So that's what we're going to deal with. Now, the first one is dealing with deception. So one ethical issue in psychology is deception, and the BPS guideline states that participants should be able to give informed consent, and that means that they shouldn't be deceived about what the study involves. But often it's not actually possible because the aims of the study need to remain hidden in order for it to be possible to carry out the study. For example, in Milgram's study to obedience, the participants needed to believe that the shocks that were being given were real and they were being given for the learning task. One way of dealing with that problem is to gain prior general or presumptive consent. This basically means asking the general public if they would be willing to take part in the study, and then presuming that the participants would also believe the same. So in Milgram's study, he asked his colleagues and psychology students if they would be happy to take part, and they said that they would. However, even though he could not have known how the participants would react, Milgram was still criticised for deception. The problem with presumptive consent is that the people asked may actually be different to the participants, and they could also underestimate the potential for harm that can cause, and that seems to have been the case in Milgram. Another way of dealing with the issue is to fully debrief the participants at the end of the study. This means that things like Milgram, he showed that the Mr. Wallace, the person that was in the chair getting the shocks, was not actually harmed by the shocks, and he also explained the full procedure to the participants and gave them the right to withdraw their data if they felt that they needed to. This could have been considered as successful, as Milgram actually found that 84% of participants were glad that they'd taken part. However, fully debriefing doesn't turn back the clocks, and participants may still feel embarrassed or even uncomfortable or even have low self-esteem as a result of actually taking part. So another dealing with an ethical issue would be informed consent. So every participant should know exactly what the point of the research is and what it is that they're actually consenting to. And sometimes it cannot be possible if the participant is not capable of understanding what they're agreeing to. So examples of these include people that are elderly, participants with mental health issues or even learning difficulties, and sometimes children. This issue can be dealt with by gaining consent from a responsible adult to the participant. So in the cases of children under the age of 16, they can't actually take part unless they have parental consent. For example, Gibson and Walk, which was one of the studies that we did in PY3, they used babies that were 6 months old, and they actually gained the consent from the mother. On the other hand, in Langers and Rodin's study into the enhanced effects of choice and I can't remember the title, but into well-being with elderly patients, informed consent wasn't actually addressed, as the patients or the residents didn't actually know they were taking part in a study. However, if the researchers had actually told them, then demand characteristics would have shown and actually made the study pointless, and the results wouldn't be worth anything. A final one is harm. Now, dealing with harm is quite difficult sometimes because you can't always predict that it'll happen. But the BPS guidelines states that a participant must be kept free from psychological and physical harm as much as it is possible. So this particular thing can be dealt with by making sure that the participant doesn't come into any physical harm due to faulty equipment or the incompetence of the researcher, and by avoiding any situation that could cause the participant psychological stress, such as distress or embarrassment. However, this is often difficult, like I said before, is because it's not always possible to predict or even know the risk of harm occurring. And you don't even know how the individual would react. So you'd have to wait until they'd taken part for to understand how they would actually react. For example, Milgram defended his study by stating that he could not have known what the participants would have actually experienced. So this problem can be overcome by giving the participants the right to withdraw at any time that they feel uncomfortable. However, it could be argued that Milgram didn't address this satisfactorily, because he didn't actually allow the participants to express this right, because they'd been prompted by the researcher to carry on, and this particular prompt by the experimenter might have actually added to the distress that they'd experienced. Now, the format for these, again, is ever so slightly different, because it's more about examples all the way through. Now, the first part had 4 parts, and then the other 2 had 3 parts. So it's not really point evidence example, because you're more about stating what the problem is and how to deal with it, giving an example. And sometimes there are quite different ways of doing it, so it's not just giving one example of dealing with. So again, if you have any more questions or anything on ethic committees or ethic guidelines and punishments, or any other points that you'd like me to go over, then please comment and I'm more than happy to help. Again, good luck guys!